There are so many different kinds of stories. The story you're about to hear is a once-upon-a-time kind of story, a pretend kind of story. It's interesting, though, that parts of the story really did happen. For example, that little boy you see in the picture really did rescue a baby rabbit only hours old from a cat's mouth. He really did keep that bunny in a little box, and when there were tornado warnings, he kept the box close until danger was past. Also, it so happened that the boy named the rabbit Tornado, and when the rabbit was big enough, the boy really was so gallant as to return Tornado to his own rabbit family near the garden. But there are many parts of this story that couldn't possibly have happened, because obviously the story was told by a human, and it's hard for a human to speak for a rabbit. Listen carefully, though, because when you think about it, what makes a little boy hope something so small as a rabbit can be happy? And when you think about it, well, what makes you think about it? With this in mind, let's be happy too. And let's remember that occasionally, even once-upon-a-time kinds of stories can hold important secrets about the greatest story of all time. So this once-upon-a-time story is about an observant young animal, a rabbit, who lived with his own rabbit family near the garden by the tool shed.
It's hard to tell how Tornado came to be so observant, but it certainly may have been because of his very unusual bunny beginnings. It was commonly known that as a baby, Tornado was robbed from his nest by a hunting house cat, and that his family had actually given up hope of ever seeing him again, until a field mouse brought them the glad tidings of his appearance during a storm. The mouse, it seems, had been foraging in the basement, and when the wind picked up severely, she was intruded upon by the entire human family. The radio's warnings of tornadoes in the vicinity had forced them to shelter, with their children, their household pets, and even the injured bunny still in his sick bed. As soon as the danger was over, the little mouse hurried to tell the rabbits that their baby had not become the cat's dinner after all, but that a boy had rescued his bruised little body to be patiently restored to health. It was even more remarkable, though, when a short time later the same boy was so gallant as to return Tornado to his own home with his own rabbit family near the garden. This was an historic event, and all the families of the woodland were overjoyed to welcome Tornado home. As time went by, Tornado's parents watched their son grow up to be as handsome in every way as his brothers. But it is important to understand that though he did look the same on the outside, on the inside, where his little bunny heart beat within his soft bunny breast, the difference was enormous. In the woods, animals are always very busy, for life can take serious turns from time to time, and what with changes in the weather and predators on every side, there isn't much time for the frivolous kinds of holidays that humans enjoy. There is one exception, though, and that is the holiday in early spring that the children of Adam for some reason call Easter. Regardless of its name, it's a blessed day for humans and animals alike, and it is commonly known that even the rocks would cry out if there was not a voice to rejoice on this very holy day. Whereas all God's creatures have become almost weary in waiting, they remember that for the children of Adam, God will one day usher in the promise of the Lamb, and hope is always fresh on the morning of Lamb's Day. It seemed it was even more so for the creatures who lived near the house, by the garden, that first spring after Tornado was returned to his family. As always, the animals had gathered to see the children of Adam scamper through the garden like squirrels hunting nuts, and it was while the bunnies were quivering with excitement under a rose bush that one of Tornado's brothers saw something peculiar. "Look! Over there! What do you think of that?" A child had left a willow basket, a hop away from their hiding place. "You know what they say is in there," another brother whispered ominously. Little sister shivered. "I wonder if it's really true." Tornado didn't like to joke about such things. "No," he reassured her, "it's just a nest of silly eggs." The little rabbits were not convinced. "Tornado, you go see if it's true," they all urged. And Tornado, wanting to prove the dark story a lie once and for all, waited until the children were beyond the azaleas and then hopped right up to the basket, bold as anything. An awful sight awaited him. A chocolate bunny, the largest treat in the basket, stood erect in a decorated box. Tornado felt a panic that was indescribable. He simply couldn't move. One can't imagine how the rabbit felt to see it close, especially a sensitive rabbit, with a heart for the real meaning of the Day of the Lamb. "Look, a rabbit!" one child shouted at the discovery of the little bunny peering into the basket. "The Easter bunny!" the others chimed in joyfully. At these words, Tornado was off like a shot, and he didn't stop until he was in the safety of the thorn bush by the meadow. The children meant no harm, but their cheerful words were indeed horrible accusations to the sensitive ears of young Tornado. There in the thorn bush he shed bunny tears for a very long time. It seemed impossible there was anything a rabbit could do to help, for once sin came to the garden, the creatures of the wood fear Adam's children, and indeed creature fears creature until the return of the Lamb. It was a warm day. The sun shone friendly on the green hill, and a fragrant breeze blew through the fresh growth of clover. As sad as the grieving bunny was, the breeze seemed to be from heaven, and carried a feeling of hope he could not resist. His truly profound longing to make Easter right was born, right there in that meadow, and it never died, no matter how hard it seemed his task would be. When at long last Tornado heard a persistent and unfamiliar sound, he realized he had fallen asleep. The sound turned out to be the soft tearing of grasses, as a flock of sheep grazed peacefully all around him. He had hoped to stay there in the comfort of his thorn bush, to observe them, but an old ewe looked up right away and startled him. "So you're awake," she spoke as if she'd been waiting. "Don't you think your kind will be worrying?" "Oh," Tornado declared, noticing for the first time that the sky was deep pink and the sun was beginning to set. "He's awake," she announced, and several others gathered close to see Tornado's condition. An old ram spoke up to comfort him. "You outran him, son, and you will every time. Now run away home before dark." "By himself?" the ewe inquired. "Was it a dog or a fox?" she went on, still concerned. "Oh, it was neither." "I see. Attacked from the air, a hawk, no doubt," the ram declared. "No, sir, it was a chocolate." "A chocolate?" the ram bleated, and the ewe looked wildly frightened. The ram's puzzled silence only alarmed the ewe further, and she began to bleat, until her little white lamb skipped joyfully to her side. The other ewes bleated, and lambs came from all directions to wait beside their mothers. The sight of the lambs brought a fresh threat of tears, but ashamed to cry, Tornado tucked his chin and waited for composure. It was the old ewe's lamb that found his sadness most disturbing. Closer, on wonderfully tiny hooves, she came to the young rabbit's aid. Her sweet woolly face nuzzled his chin, and of course, Tornado smiled, for who could resist this tickly reassurance? "He is risen," the lamb whispered softly in Tornado's ear. And emboldened by Tornado's shy smile, she joyfully bleated, "When he comes again, the lion will lay down with the lamb." With a kick and a leap, she expressed the joy that all should feel on this most holy day. Tornado admired the little lamb. She could remedy the Easter problem for sure. But the sky was darkening and the children were gone. The old ewe saw Tornado's troubled expression. "Son, the chocolate's gone. Your family's waiting." Tornado sighed. "Yes, the chocolate is gone, but I'm afraid if we don't do something, it will be back in our garden again next spring." "Mother," the little lamb cried, "can't we help?" But before the ewe could answer, a sheepdog ran up on the ridge and barked. The rabbit watched from the safety of his thorn bush as the dog ran among the flock and formed a small circle of sheep to take safely home. The little lamb did not want to leave, but the dog was persistent. She called to Tornado, and her soft brown eyes told him she would not forget. It was a sad spring for Tornado's family, for they knew the rumor of the chocolate bunny was true. When questioned, Tornado had to tell them what he had seen in the decorated box, for Tornado would never lie. Now the family knew the snake's clever treachery had ruined yet another garden. The family meeting was called, and the father spoke in a sad and somber tone. "Children, We are not the only ones that have been spitefully used in the deception of Adam. We must remember the good news. The Lamb has overcome, and there will one day be an end to misery. We await the return of the Lamb." "But, Father," one of the brothers questioned, "if on the very day of the Lamb, of all days, the children of Adam will not look at the Lamb—" "Hush," Mother cried with fear. The baby bunnies ran to her, and Father continued bravely. "Pray for Adam," Father maintained, "that he will honor the Lamb." Oddly, of all the rabbits, it was Tornado who seemed the least disturbed. When over and over they questioned him, he told the facts clearly, and he listened sadly to the regrets of his shamed family members, but he himself remained somewhat distracted. The reason for his calm began that day of commitment in the thorn bush. He would not let the snake's lies spoil the garden by the tool shed, not their garden. All summer Tornado seemed to have but one preoccupation, that of finding the sheep. Many times he hopped to the meadow to wait in the thorn bush, hoping he would see the flock come over the crest of the hill. They seemed to have disappeared completely. It was not until one day, just before fall, that Tornado saw the dog. Everything inside told Tornado to hush and be still in the safety of the thorn bush. But the sight of the dog turning to leave was too much for the rabbit. What if he never saw his friend again? "Sir," Tornado called from within the bush. The dog was there as quick as a hound after a nice fat hare, and Tornado trembled at what he had done. "I'm looking for the sheep, sir. Do you know where I could find them?" The dog in his amazement sat on his haunches, dumbfounded. "You silly rabbit! Don't you know I will eat you if I can?" Tornado shuddered, but he replied as if to a friend. "Those are not the words you speak to the lambs in your care." "This is not a time for trust, foolish rabbit," the dog barked. "Be sure I will eat you all the faster if you ask me to forget the punishment of Adam." Tornado spoke clearly to the wise rebuke. "I submit to the curse. I pray for Adam, and I await the return of the Lamb." "I'm listening," the dog growled. Tornado begged urgently. "I will stay here in the briars where you can't harm me, but please, for the love of the Lamb, tell me where I can find the ewe and her lamb." For a moment the dog was puzzled. Then he understood. "Lamb? She's half grown, larger than me. Be here for the shearing in the morning." The dog did not wait for Tornado's reply. He ran over the ridge and was gone. How sad Tornado was, and how stupid he felt, not realizing the lamb would grow and never be that little lamb he saw near the thorn bush. He had been sure that if the little lamb would come next Lamb's Day morning, the snake would not so easily distract the children with chocolate rabbits